have you ever heard whispers in the dead of night, tales carried on the wind from islands far away, stories of creatures that blur the line between human and monster? Tonight, we turn the page to a legend whispered in the heart of the Philippines, a name spoken with a shudder, the Aswang. This isn't just a monster. It's a shape-shifting terror, a nightmare that walks among us, wearing the face of a neighbor, a friend, or even a lover. Forget what you think you know about vampires and werewolves. The Aswang is something far more ancient, far more personal. Join me as we journey into the shadows of a remote village where a young man named Marco is about to discover that the darkest legends are terrifyingly real. Marco had always been a city boy, born and raised in the concrete maze of Manila. So, when his parents sent him to their provincial hometown for the summer, it felt like stepping back in time. The village was nestled deep in a valley, flanked by dense, emerald jungle and rice paddies that shimmered like glass under the sun. Electricity was a luxury that came and went, and the nights were a profound, inky black, punctuated only by the symphony of cicadas and the distant barking of dogs. His grandmother, Lola Ilara, was the village matriarch, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, each one telling a story. Her eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharp, knowing glint. On his first night, as they sat on the porch, sipping warm salabat, she pointed a trembling finger towards the jungle's edge. "Never go into the forest after the sun has set, Apo," she warned, her voice a low, serious hum. "The Aswang hunts when the moon is high. They look for the unwary." Marco just smiled and nodded, dismissing it as old-world superstition. He'd heard the stories, of course, shapeshifters with long, proboscis-like tongues, ghouls that preyed on the sick and unborn. To him, they were just campfire tales, thrilling but fictional. The first few weeks Marco helped on the farm, swam in the river, and got to know the villagers. He was particularly drawn to a young woman named Eliana. She was beautiful, with eyes as dark as the midnight sky and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes. She lived in a small nipa hut at the very edge of the village, right where the jungle began to reclaim the land. The other villagers were polite to her, but always from a distance. There was an unspoken caution in their interactions, a hesitation Marco couldn't quite understand. When he asked his Lola about it, she simply pursed her lips and said, "Some families carry old shadows, Marco. Be careful where you step." One evening, as a festival approached, the village was alive with activity. Marco and Eliana walked along the riverbank, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and violet. "Will you come to the fiesta with me?" he asked, his heart thumping in his chest. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I can't," she said softly. "My mother. She is very ill. I must care for her." Marco offered to help, to bring the village healer, but Eliana politely refused, insisting her mother's illness was a private family matter. He felt a pang of disappointment but respected her wishes. That night, a storm rolled in, a furious tempest that shook the small houses. Lying in his cot, Marco was startled by a strange sound over the din of the rhino-rhythmic, flapping noise, like giant leathery wings beating against the air. He peered out his window. Through the sheets of rain, he saw a dark, winged shape silhouetted against the churning clouds, circling high above the village. It was massive, bigger than any bird he had ever seen. His blood ran cold. He remembered his Lola's words, the image of the creature from her stories, the tik-tik, a form the Aswang often took. He shook his head, blaming the storm and his overactive imagination. It had to be a large bat, nothing more. The next morning, the village was somber. Old Mangberto, who had been sick for weeks, had passed away in the night. The village healer, Aling Nena, looked grim. "It's unnatural," she muttered to Marco's Lola. He was getting better. It's as if something drained the life right out of him. On his chest were two small, almost imperceptible puncture marks. A shiver traced its way down Marco's spine. He thought of the winged shape, the flapping sound. Coincidence, he told himself. It had to be. Driven by a mix of concern and a gnawing suspicion, Marco decided to check on Eliana and her mother. He walked to her hut at the edge of the village. The air around it was strangely cold, heavy with the scent of decay and something else. Something coppery and sweet. He called Eliana's name, but there was no answer. The door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, he stepped inside. The small hut was dark and rank. On a simple mat in the corner lay an old woman, pale and emaciated. But it was what he saw next that made his stomach lurch. Hanging from the bamboo rafters were strange, dried herbs he didn't recognize, and in a clay pot by the hearth was a dark, viscous liquid, and next to it, a small, dark feather. It looked exactly like one you'd find on a bird, only it felt slick, almost oily, to the touch. He backed out of the hut, his mind racing. Eliana was nowhere to be seen. He ran back to his Lola's house, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He told her everything: the winged creature, Mangberto's death, the strange scene at Eliana's hut. Lola Ilara's face went pale. She grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "The Aswang," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. "They often appear as beautiful women to lure in outsiders. Her mother isn't sick, Marco. She is the elder Aswang, too weak to hunt. Eliana hunts for her." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Eliana's isolation, the villagers' caution, her refusal of help, the creature in the sky, it was all real. That night, Marco couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside was a monster in the dark. Just after midnight, he heard it again. Walk, walk, walk. The call of the tick-tick. It was closer this time. He crept to the window and peered out. There, perched on the roof of the neighboring house, was a grotesque creature. It had the torso of a woman, Eliana's torso, but its back was sprouted with enormous bat-like wings, and its lower half was missing, severed cleanly at the waist. In the moonlight, he could see its horrifyingly long, thread-like tongue uncoiling, questing through the air, searching. It was sniffing, tasting the air, for sickness, for life. Its head snapped in his direction. Its eyes, glowing with a faint red light, locked onto his. It knew he was watching. Marco scrambled back from the window, his heart hammering against his ribs. He heard a scraping sound on the roof, the sound of claws on thatch. It was on his house. He could hear its slow, dragging crawl right above his head. He held his breath, praying it would leave. Then, a thin black filament snaked down through a crack in the ceiling, impossibly long and agile. It was her tongue. It slithered through the air, probing, searching for him in the darkness. He grabbed the first thing he could find. A heavy wooden stewland, hurled it at the ceiling. The tongue retracted with a wet, slurping sound. A furious shriek echoed from the roof. A sound of pure rage and agony. It was followed by the frantic beating of wings, fading into the distance. Marco collapsed onto the floor, shaking uncontrollably. He stayed there until the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, offering a fragile promise of safety. The next morning, he packed his bags. Lola Ilara pressed a small pouch of salt and a sharpened bamboo stake into his hand. "They will not forget this," she said, her voice grave. "You have marked yourself. Never return." As the bus rumbled away from the village, Marco looked back one last time. Standing at the edge of the jungle, partially hidden by the trees, was Ellie. She wasn't smiling. Her dark eyes were fixed on him, filled not with the warmth he once knew, but with an ancient, predatory hunger, a promise of a hunt that was not yet over. He turned away, facing the road ahead, but he knew he would never truly escape. He would spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, listening for the beating of leathery wings in the night, forever haunted by the beautiful face of the monster he almost loved. So the next time you find yourself in a quiet, remote place, and you hear a strange sound on the wind, remember Marco's story. Remember that not all monsters have monstrous faces. Sometimes, they wear the ones we trust the most. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the shadows. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to hit that like button, Subscribe for more stories from the dark, and ring that notification bell. Let me know in the comments what legend you want me to explore next. Until then, stay safe and check your ceilings.